Hello and welcome to Give and Toke, presented by Plant Ed, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host Paul, and in this episode we welcome the team from Treehouse Distribution. Treehouse Distribution is dedicated to providing the highest quality flower that meets and exceeds patient expectations. If you're a regular listener of the show, you might have heard Jonathan Jones's recent appearance, and today he has returned and brought along Tim Oates, Tim Dyason, Scott Parry, and Hamish Barakat. It's a stacked lineup and a great episode in which we explore the Treehouse story, each person's relationship with cannabis, their exciting new partnership with Biortica Green Farmers, and so much more. If you like what you hear, be sure to rate, review, like, and subscribe. Follow on Instagram at Give and Toke, and check out our stylish cannabis accessories at giveandtoke.com.au. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with the team from Treehouse Distribution. Fellas, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name's Tim Oates. I'm the CCO at Treehouse. I've been working in cannabis for maybe 10 to 12 years now. Started with Tetra in Australia and now recently started working on the Treehouse project.
I'm Jonathan Jones, been working in the cannabis industry for almost 15 years now. I run amok all over the world and decided to join a band of very accomplished and successful gentlemen, and we founded Treehouse.
Tim Dyason, Chief of Brands at Treehouse. Got my start 5 years ago with Jonathan Jones, working on a few projects.
G'day guys, Scott Parry, CFO of Treehouse. Been floating around cannabis since 2017. Became a patient. Thought this could help some people, does help some people, will help some people. So doing all things in the greenhouse and looking forward to this adventure with the guys and seeing where this all goes. It's going to be a fascinating conversation.
And my name's Hamish Barakat. Similar to Tim, we founded Delta Tetra together, so we've been in the space for the last almost decade in Australia.
It is really cool to be here with you guys today, overlooking Spencer Street, Marvel Stadium, not far from Flagstaff Gardens, where we had a bit of a failed 420 recently. I hope you guys had a better 420 than me. Anyone care to share their experience?
Yeah, we definitely had a good 420 up at Buds and Bowls. Tim, myself, and a few of the team were up there just soaking it up and met some really cool people. It's good to see that it's evolving to the point where you can rent a venue and have an event. We were definitely sitting up there playing lawn bowls, watching what was happening here in Melbourne. And it was actually quite sad to think, like, you put on an event and then the next thing you know, it's just railroaded by, the boys in blue.
Was it particularly bad?
Yeah, there are about 80 cops there, sniffer dogs, 36 people arrested when there's, only 300 people. So, yeah, about 10% of people that went arrested.
I didn't realize it was that bad. I live in Amsterdam, or just outside, so don't catch everything that happens.
Experience
I'm
there.
Surprised by that because you said up in Queensland it was far more accommodating.
Yeah, there was probably
on a great event,
300-400 people or something, just Buds and Bowls. Yeah,
Josip from Friendly Aussie Buds.
Yeah, shout out to friends of the pod, Josip and Christina. So pretty cool experience up there at Buds and Bowls.
Yeah, it was great, man. I loved it. I think this should be a yearly thing. I talked to him off on the side, and he wants to do a couple more,
maybe a Melbourne one.
Yeah. Got to get that going
would be
around
hype.
The country.
I think so. I think it's got a place. I think it just brings community out, whereas when you're sitting there and you see what happened in Melbourne, it's it shows that the stigma is still so thick.
It's definitely still there. Yeah. And these events are awesome for, like you say, the community building and the culture and these types of things, but it does go sort of reasonably in your face of the regulatory environment that exists in Australia. So it is kind of fair that to some way it's enforced to a certain degree, but that's the paradigm that we exist in at the moment, which makes it difficult because it's kind of counter to what cannabis has always been, which is a very cultural thing, brings people together. And then in a medical environment, if you applied that same sort of culture to, say, opiates or whatever, probably wouldn't be quite so cool. And I guess that's still how some people look at it, right?
Well, it still operates in the shared learning space. Other medical fields are very private, confidential, whereas cannabis has always been a shared experience.
Yeah, again, it's
you learnt from someone.
It's a round peg trying to fit in a square hole again. That's a huge problem, I think, in Australian cannabis, broadly speaking.
Oh, we're certainly up against it when it comes to, attitudes and values and awareness of the effectiveness of cannabis. But the great thing about this chat tonight is maybe we can celebrate, the things worth celebrating. One of the things I really want to kick off with is the response to Jonathan's episode, because it is definitely one of my most listened to episodes, with a lot of, rigorous conversation and comments and discussion coming out of it. Jonathan, there's absolutely no secret that you're a little bit outspoken at times, and I'm all for it. But no doubt I definitely got, a mix of DMs in response to your episode. And this is predominantly in response to that idea that, Australian cannabis is not up to standard, or perhaps, not up to your standard, because, you've been around the world, you've seen what cannabis can be. So perhaps elaborate a little bit more on that, why Australian cannabis isn't yet up to standard.
Yeah, look, you got to remember, most of the time what I'm speaking from is my experience. It's not something that I've just concocted while sitting on a couch. And, my business partners sitting at this table can speak to the same things. Is we're all passionate about one thing, and that's what we've experienced through cannabis over the last 10 to 15 years. It's not that we came out of the gate saying, oh, we know quality, we know this, we know that. That's definitely not the case. Like,
we've been around for a while.
Yeah, we started at the bottom, like anyone in cannabis. Like, you have to start somewhere. So,
and I think like your what you said needs a little bit of contextualizing. I don't think it's necessarily that like the problem with the Australian cannabis industry is that we're not like there in terms of cultivation. So like the domestic production is so far away, in my opinion, and I think in John's opinion, from where it needs to be. It's not sort of even really worth entertaining at this point, and that's why most of the products are made up of imported products, right? Is because the Australian producers aren't providing what the market wants. Some are, but broadly speaking, after 7 or 8 years of like legalized medical cannabis production, the fact that the majority of the market is not furnished by Australian producers is not a fault of the market. It's a fault of the producers in Australia. I think that's what you're
you
right?
hit it on the nail on the head, Tim. It's, like I said, it's not me just going out and doing this for attention. It's pointing out what's just in front of us. Things can be done better, people can do better, and that's where my, I guess, opinion and what I post about is surrounded with, is just pointing out, hey, us as an industry or even us as individuals can always do better. It's just Australians have this thing about, tall poppy syndrome. You can't tell someone to do better without being offensive.
And I think, again, it's worth reiterating, in relation to the domestic production of cannabis in this country. That's what those, I think, comments are around. If you think broadly about the Australian industry, it's great. Right, there's like really awesome patient access. We have like companies that have been able to do quite a lot of things under quite a forgiving regulatory framework. There's a huge amount of products on the market. Patients are getting access to them. There's so many good things about it compared to other markets around the world. It's just a tad lacking in that domestic production department.
There are a couple of good things that come out of that, including that idea that, from challenge comes opportunity. But I do find it's a very Australian thing, when mistakes are made, to be like, no, fuck off, I did nothing wrong.
Right.
So, I guess I'm curious to know that with all these experiences and all these different, things that you've seen across the world, what are some of the challenges you've overcome? How have you gotten through it?
This group here, I think we've made every mistake under the sun. I know we've spent some money on projects that never came to fruition.
Bad business partners.
Bad business partners.
We only spent our money.
Yeah, exactly. I guess for us, it all comes down to what we've done wrong, and then turn around and look back at those mistakes and say, well, what can we do better, and how can we improve to never make those mistakes again? And I think you have to make those mistakes to then know what not to do. And going back to my point around quality, the industry in general, majority of these people have never made these mistakes. So it's not like I'm telling people, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, your degree doesn't mean anything. I'm just pointing out these mistakes have been made prior, and we can all look in the history book and learn from that. And that's where I think this team's so strong, is we actually have learnt from our mistakes.
You just have to look at the timeline of, the progression of cell phones. Early 1980s, we have these big bricky cell phones. To 2008, we get the iPhone. And then today, even the version of the iPhone that we have now is quite different. So the Australian industry is, 8 years old. So in some senses, we could have achieved a lot, but it's also not a huge amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So, what should we be expecting in the coming years?
I think it's one of those things, you're so lucky in life. It's so rare to be able to go into the future and come back to the past. We can go to America, we can go to Canada and see what the future looks like, come back to the past and make your chess moves based on what you've seen there. And so I think Cannabis 2.0 is just around the corner. All the different sort of formulations and delivery methods, the quality that we're now talking about, where you're getting out of the infancy, you're now moving to premium connoisseur, and we'll pay for quality. And so I think that's the next phase. But just being able to go into the future, look at the Canadian market, come back to the past, the Australian market. It's super exciting to be able to do that, because it's so rare in any industry to be a pioneer that you can see what the future looks like.
I can certainly vouch for the fact that in life I've learnt most lessons on how not to do things, and that seems to be a common thread in these conversations. Where can we look around the world that, is not getting it right?
Australia. No,
Harsh.
look, no.
There's a lot of places that are not getting it right.
Look at Canada.
Everywhere's got its own problems.
New
Right?
Zealand.
There's no market that you can look at around the world and say there's like a fucking quintessential example of what legalized cannabis should be looking like. And like the reason for that is pretty like evident and good, is there just hasn't been that much time. So everyone's kind of trying something different. Every group of companies or industry within a country has to adapt and learn from their own environment that they're in, because there's no standardized regulations, there's no one same market in terms of like their taste profile or what they're looking for, relating to consumer demands. And so like I don't think you can look at anywhere and say that anywhere's infallible.
You can't, because you look at America, people are still getting it wrong.
Yeah,
Even with the blueprint in front of them for the last 15 years.
Yeah,
people
I mean,
are still
California's
getting it
pretty close on cultivation. Their cultivation.
Pumping taxes.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like they don't have everything, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Black market's thriving though.
If you had to,
now.
If you had to say like,
so black market, you look at the recorrection in America, black market is now bigger than the rec market because of the way, the angle and the way that the rec market's been situated. So me commenting and blurting out saying Australia, look, that's just kind of me, but you've really got to look at Israel. You got to look at Canada, the framework. You look at the framework in Brazil, Mexico. There's a lot of countries who are either looking to do it or have been doing it and haven't figured it out. We just have to stop looking at them as the blueprint, and as a country, do it the right way for the country and the people.
So there's obviously a lot of care in this room, a lot of love for the plant. And, that was the name of Jonathan's episode, For the Love of the Plant, because that came beaming through in the episode. And we obviously know that people need passion to really drive them in this field. So I'd love to start with you, Haim. Why is it that you love this plant? Why is it that you have a relationship? How did you develop your relationship?
I hate to drop it, but just bad accidents, things like that kind of led to I guess just a different pathway in life, than probably where you thought you were going. So that was just kind of me in like a short nutshell. Just bad car crash kind of just changed my, I guess, outlook on life and where I was going with everything. And yeah, found cannabis as, I guess, alternative medicines, ways to deal with pain, things like that I guess I wasn't really ready to accept hard pharma for, long term and things like that. So that's probably my quickest way. I spent a lot of time in the States because of the where I grew up in the world, in Indonesia. A lot of my friends went to the States. So I was just over there, saw, Colorado right as it legalized, just kind of at the right place at the right time, kind of saw a lot of stuff play out and just think, this is interesting, like there could be a lot of business potential here in Australia, especially because, just my time here, I realized how little culture there was, how little understanding there was, just how little kind of care there was for anything beyond, people grew weed, but then they would just harvest it and they might dry it in an oven because they wanted to like smoke it or something. And I kept thinking,
Guilty.
look, you know,
I've put it on a radiant heater before, thinking that was the right thing to do.
Everyone's been there, man.
4-day cure, dry cure.
I used to leave my weed in the jar and put it in the sun in the garden because it like condensation would go around the edge of the jar. But like it dries it.
Yeah, I was scared if I googled it that the cops would come after me, so I didn't want to look up how to do this shit. So I was just guessing.
It's so far
all the time, and I'm like, yeah, but you've just spent 5 months of your life, and now you don't want to wait 2 weeks just to get to that point where you're like, it's probably a bit better to smoke. So I don't know. My time's kind of shifted from. I've seen a lot of business opportunity in the States. I got lots of friends that run very successful businesses, and I thought, you know, with Tim and Delta Tetra, we saw ourselves more as picks and shovels guys. Everyone was running to the finish line saying, how do I spend as much money that I don't have physically possible when I have no real experience running an operation? And we've basically seen a lot of people fail because they don't understand what they're doing, and they don't want to actually listen to the right people sometimes. You know, running a cannabis business is not the same as running your general business. There's a lot of stuff that will come up that I don't think many people have dealt with, you know, like especially if they're growing. It's I think a set of problems that are unique. They're fixable, and like a lot of people can learn it, but if you don't have the right team that are ready to listen, you're going to just run into the same problem, which is growing mids.
Your problem is growing mids.
Not my problem, but a lot of people's.
Now, I am going to come back to this conversation about, you know, our love for cannabis, but I do want to stop there on Delta Tetra and find out, you know, in a nutshell, what is Delta Tetra? You know, what do you guys do?
So Delta Tetra is just a cannabis consulting business. We primarily focus on all things regulatory, compliance, you know, licensing. That's probably the nutshell, right, Tim?
Yeah, we started Delta in like 2016. Like Haim said, Australia was one of those sort of like unique markets in the sense that there wasn't like a huge amount of pre-existing industry like to convert into the medical space, or at least have a position to try and move into it. And Haim and I both came from positions where we already had a pretty good understanding of cannabis, like operationally.
Like a lot of really positive, enthusiastic people, but don't necessarily have. Like 2016, they were still in 2000.
People just didn't know.
1980 to some degree.
Yeah.
You know, I grew when I was young. Now it's the 2000s. You're like, all right, that was one plant. You know, like I get it. And I get this is a whole business, but it's not just that simple.
And the limited market that there was, like that was involved in cannabis with some pre-existing experience, just didn't have the resources. Like the barriers were too high. But so Haim and I came at it from like a cannabis perspective. We knew what people needed to do to kind of set up facilities and things, and then we learned the regs, which was like the opposite, I guess, to what everybody else was doing and how they were looking at it. People they were pharmaceutical or from like big ag or whatever biotech companies, and tried to apply pharmaceutical ideas to cannabis. And so we were kind of unique in the sense that we put the cannabis first and then did the regs, specialized in the licensing, figured out all the compliance stuff, what people needed to do, hired some awesome people that helped us along the way. And that allowed us to learn so much because we got to operate in Australia. That was how we met John. John came to us, I don't know when, like 2008.
I was considering, do I move back to Australia or stay in the States?
Yeah, because you were back and forth at
Yeah.
the time. That's right. And so we did licenses for people. We helped them design their facilities, helped them build their companies, position themselves in the market. It allowed us to learn a heap. We did everything in Australia. We done some stuff in New Zealand, in the UK, Zimbabwe. Weirdly enough. Jersey Islands. Yeah, we've done some cool stuff. And so now we get to like draw on all of that experience, like all those years of networks, like people that we met. And like Haim and I were always kind of 1 foot in the legacy market, if you want to call it that or whatever, and then 1 foot in the corporate market. And so we were kind of doing all the stuff we loved from a passion perspective in the legacy side, and then learning how to run businesses and operate in the corporate side. So hopefully we could try and bring the two together, and that's what now Treehouse is.
The second most negative messages that I get is when I accidentally say black market instead of legacy market. So thank you for clarifying that. I really do appreciate it.
So also that's the green market.
Legacy's good.
We'll be right back. Podcast listeners regularly ask me where they can go to learn more about medicinal cannabis, and today I've got the answer: Plant Ed. When you visit planteducation.net.au, you'll find an array of class-leading courses and modules covering topics like cannabis and depression, inflammation reduction, the endocannabinoid system, side effects of use, and more. Whether you're a healthcare professional or a patient, you work in the industry, or you're just feeding your curiosity, planteducation.net.au offers both free and paid courses from experts including Dr. Dustin Sulak, Dr. John Tay, and Dr. Orit Holtzman. With over 50 hours of free educational content, make planteducation.net.au your first stop for expanding your cannabis knowledge. And for a limited time, listeners of this podcast will receive 10% off any paid courses by using the code GIVETOKE10 at checkout. And that's GIVETOKE10 at checkout. So visit planteducation.net.au to see their range of courses designed to nurture your knowledge and understanding of the power of medicinal cannabis. Circling back to kind of, why we do what we do and why we love the plant, over to you, Scott. How did you get involved in this world of cannabis?
It's a super weird story. I, as a patient, held up at gunpoint.
Yeah, that's a normal
didn't
sentence.
work out so well for me, but was over in Canada and started trying CBD and to help me calm down. And then all of a sudden I thought, do you know what, this probably this could probably work for me in Australia. They tried to put me on Valium for the PTSD, and that didn't sit that well with me. So jumped onto the CBD. I think I was in the top 500 patients. I was super early, and there was no patients around then. Like, you couldn't run a profitable cannabis business with 500 patients in the country. But how I sort of came into it in a business sense is I was working with a guy called Raphael Meshulam in a company over in Israel, and he was doing some interesting stuff with acids. And so I'm not too sure if you guys know much about how the acids work, but before THC is THC, it's THC acid. It's probably, the preclinical trials are doing like 500 to 1,000 times stronger than actually traditional CBD or THCA. It's very difficult to stabilize these, but if you stabilize them, which Rafi did, then they could have unbelievable medical properties. So just learning from him, seeing patients where they have epileptic children who are having 100 seizures a day, then have CBD and have no seizures a day, and then seeing the parents who've not slept for 3 years since the child's been born have the first night of sleep, all of a sudden, like, that changes everyone's life, not just the patients, but the brothers and sisters of that epileptic kid. And I think no one really talks enough about the side effect of cannabis, which is how that positively impacts the rest of the family and friends of that patient. Everyone's so focused on the patient. So what about the carers of that patient? They're the ones who benefit, because finally that Alzheimer's or epilepsy or whatever it may be is just under control, and this patient and their family are happier. Sleep, I think, is the most important thing for all humans, and just helping a person sleep for the first time in X amount of years is everything. So if you can just help one person sleep, like, I think you just go back, pat yourself on the back, and say, do you know what, I made a difference in someone's life, because that's the power of what this medicine can do and has done and will continue to do for people. So I think the Treehouse guys and what their superpower is they know quality, they stand for quality, and that's really coming back from John's comment. Like, all he's saying is that we could do better because the quality is not exactly where it could be compared to the other areas around the world. And so that's what Treehouse does, is brings that quality to Australia, and looking forward to growing that quality in Australia.
Timmy, why do you love cannabis?
That's two really hard guys to follow up against. From, I don't particularly like saying this, but from a young age, I used cannabis. I was in the action sports area, like skating from a young age, surfing, traveling around with older guys. It was always around. So I started off on more of a rec foot, but later in life I actually had an accident. I broke my neck and had brain surgery. I had bleeding on the brain, and post-surgery I was ruined from all the opioids and everything, and it took me 3 months to really get off them, and I used black market medicinal cannabis.
Gonna get those DMs again.
Yeah, ooh, black market. No, I used it to get to get off the opioids, because I was in a terrible state, and it really saved my life at that point. I was in a wheelchair. It got me back up walking. Like, faster recovery. I like, over the 3 months have changed from going from onto, like, I was making bigger steps, more progress. So it was really good and really enjoyable to like go from not knowing what my life looked like to 12 months later snowboarding, traveling the world again. And I was back enjoying cannabis in a different light. I was in the States and traveling, Canada and stuff. I was always doing the little snowboard thing. So I was always enjoying some good medicine overseas, which was like talk about quality. That's where I found the quality. But when this accident happened, that's actually where I found John in the snow scene when we were younger, and he helped me get back on a path like with the medicinal cannabis to really like turn things around from like the opioids. And like, this isn't an addiction story. This is like proper medical surgery, broken neck stuff. Like, and I just like kind of at that point I was like, damn, like I need to do something about this. I was a biomedical engineer. I was, working in hospitals and I'd actually grown up studying branding and fashion design and a whole bunch of like arts and crafts, but I was like looking for a career at that point. And I just like, after all this, I just went, you know what, threw it all in and I started working with John. And started working with him. And then a few years in, we started Herb, and then that turned into Treehouse with these guys, and like the dream's alive, and I can't wait to help more people.
And if this was a video podcast, people could see how cute you are in your matching hoodies.
We go everywhere like this.
You kind of have to blur that out.
Jonathan, obviously there's an entire episode that people can go and listen to hear your story. And, we spent an hour together and you were gracious enough to explain your travels around the world, your experience with, your mother and her inability to find quality medicine. But, for those that haven't listened to that episode, haven't listened yet, could you please give us a bit of an explanation of why you love cannabis? What got you here for the listeners of this episode?
Yeah, look, you can always just tune in and listen to my episode with you, Paul, just to make it quick and sweet. I'm here because I love something more than really anything in the world. And I think I put my life into being around the plant like every passionate person at this table. Like, we've all, risked certain things to be around it, to learn things about it. So look, I'm just here because I love the plant. I love the people that I've met from it, and we've built a pretty good thing that can help people, get to somewhere that they want to get to. And I think for me, the only thing I care about is delivering something of quality so people can trust our business. Without trust, there's nothing. And I think with what we've brought to the table, the reward is just our hard work. And that's what we want to show people. Like I always said, stoners are not necessarily stupid people.
Tim, you've alluded to the amazing things that you've seen around the world, and you've obviously been allowed to see the world through cannabis. What planted the seed?
It's quite a difficult question. I haven't actually really thought about that for years. I got into like cannabis early on. Like I was maybe like 17, 18 when I first smoked my first joint or whatever. And then I lived in Australia from when I was 18 to 20, and I didn't really smoke weed a lot then, a little bit here and there. But when I got home, I went back to study. I got involved in TV production and filmmaking, and I was smoking weed with my buddies or whatever, and kind of just fell in love with the culture and was fascinated by the plant. And this was kind of just as Instagram was starting, and there was quite a big cannabis community on Instagram, and I met a bunch of people in the States and was following the developments overseas. And I ended up making a documentary on the war on drugs. I was quite interested in the patient advocacy side, but also the legal side of things. And that was because I got pulled up when I was walking home one night and got given a ticket in England for having weed on me, because they said that I had been matched up with reports of burglaries in the area. They said, you match the description, we're going to search you, had weed on my bag. And dude, it was like
a burglar.
The guy's 50 kg wet.
The unfortunate thing is, like, I had literally just flicked a roach. Like, I had literally just finished a joint, so I probably stunk of it. And I just felt like there was like this sort of injustice about what had happened. It was like I was upset that I was searched on the street. There were like people driving past like 5 minutes from my home. There was no real reason for it. So I got involved in like being interested in that side of things. And I made this documentary looking at the war on drugs and how it had affected people disproportionately. And then through that started working with people in Amsterdam and a little bit in Spain who both ran like practical industries over there. And then in 2015 I moved to Australia. And then in 2016 they legalized medical cannabis. But I think for me mostly, like I've been growing now for like 10, 15 years. I don't know how long I am. Yeah, 15 years. So I've always had a fascination with the cultivation side, breeding, genetics, seeing the best examples of cannabis and watching how that's developed over the last like 10, 15 years or so is a fascinating thing. I think we're just like scratching the surface of it. And that's why I think I fell in love with cannabis, and then being able to work in it legitimately in Australia and try and add value to different projects, and as the guys have said, obviously make a huge impact medicinally for people. That's such a cool thing. There's so many cool elements about the cannabis industry. What's not to love? Like there's nothing that I think that is uninteresting.
I mean, I have even heard the odd couple of comments of you are one of the better growers in Amsterdam. It's definitely popped up a few times.
People speak too highly.
The problem
is when people say that, John, is that then there's expectations. And that's what you got to avoid.
We've had an opportunity to hear about Delta Tetra. Now I'd love to hear a little bit about Treehouse. What is Treehouse Distribution?
John?
Thanks. I was sure I was about to put this onto you.
I'll chime in.
Look, I think it can come from all of us.
Yeah, we can take turns.
Treehouse was founded... It was quite interesting. I was working for a large LP, a global LP, and a friend of mine took a trip to Amsterdam, and I just thought, I'm going to meet up with Tim, go to a coffee shop, smoke some good weed, and hang out. Went down to The Hague, hung out at a coffee shop for 3 or 4 hours. And we were sitting there just thinking, like, how can we do business together? Like, how
they
can
left
we...
me back in Sydney.
Yeah, I ditched Timmy, left him at the office, and was just on a bit of a whirlwind trip. And I always wanted to work with Haim and Tim. There was always something after the licensing and just the interaction with the boys. We knew that we were going to do something. It was just when and how. So Tim and I spent that time together in Amsterdam, and we just said, let's figure something out. I left there, rang Timmy. I'm like, oi, we're going to do something with these two. Don't know what it looks like, but what do you reckon?
Yeah, at that point, like, I was back home and I was like super keen going,
Could I come too?
The Del Tetra boys want to do something. Like, I'd pieced out from working with John. He was still working for another group. In the background, I was kind of like, what am I going to do now? Started like creating and started this company Herb, and was like, I'm just going to go out on my own, and was like, yeah, like if that's what's happening, like, let's fucking do it, man. Like, sounds fucking amazing. Like, we've got 4 dudes, we've got like every aspect covered.
It was good timing.
I think it was, when people say timing is everything.
It is that.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many relationships, and that's like one of the beautiful things of Treehouse is that like all of us have been doing this for quite a time now, and like in different aspects of the industry. So the value that we can like draw on is, I think, something that isn't particularly rivaled in Australia, which is super cool. But for us, like, it was timing. We were all talking about doing the same thing independently, and then John and I kind of sat down, and Haim and I were like trying to figure something out on our own, and they were doing the same thing, and it was like, oh, maybe we could try and do something together, and it all just like folded together really nicely. And like, we've had a bumpy time, all of us, over the last few years, man.
Like starting Treehouse, people just think you just raise a heap of money, you go and import some product. It sounds fun. But, like, we've had moments where, we've wanted to kill each other. We've been screaming at each other for hours on a phone or a screen. You have to be passionate, and I think that's what's made this thing so great is that we actually give a shit not only about our business, but what we've all brought to the table. Like we really care about what Treehouse stands to deliver on. And then I guess to kind of wrap up why we're all together, it started off as 4 of us, it became 5 of us, and then it became 6 of us with Scott joining us. And Scott kind of puts the icing on the cake, in my opinion. He's the adult of the group.
Which is like, that is a stretch for if you know Scotty. He's one of the most fun people I've ever met, but has the FOMO of a 5-year-old.
He definitely adds.
Like, what?
Well, to call Scott the adult of the situation,
He keeps it together. He's definitely not like, strapped up suits and rules, but he definitely like brought something to the Treehouse team that we didn't already have. And I think now with the group the way it is and the team that we have, Treehouse is a real business built by real cannabis people. And I think when Scott joined, it just made the piece of the puzzle just fit.
Yeah. I think like one thing to add to that is, while we are like 100, like the core team is 100% like cannabis people, which again, as everyone says, I think gives us our edge. We got some depth in this team. Like there's some really solid people behind us. Like it's not just us before everyone starts listening to this and being like, yo, these stoners have just figured out how to make a weed company work or whatever. Like it's really not that. Like we really have a solid team behind us of passionate, good people that understand the regs, understand quality. Like I genuinely think we have one of the best quality teams in the country. They're really good and they know their shit, and they've been around the space or their respective fields for a long time. So it's not that we're just like 5 guys being like, is this good weed? There's a real company here with talented people.
Yeah, we've validated with product and work ethic. I think we're one of the companies that have done both pretty well. Not saying we're perfect by any means. I'm sure a lot of people will tell you that we're not. But we've brought something together that we're all proud of. And that's what I think the answer to your question in a full roundabout way. Treehouse is just a brand of guys who wanted to build something for everyone else.
I'm going to throw over to Dad now. Scott, as the adult in the room, is there anything you want to add to that?
Oh, wow. Shit, I think that's like just someone saying you're old, isn't it? That's basically a nice way of saying you're old.
I was like, shit, I just called him an old man.
Yeah, that's exactly how it landed. Where do you go? Old. Wow. That's it's right between the eyes.
Well, I sort of dragged you in on this, right?
Yes.
Scott's been someone that I've loved and cherished, and Hamish too, for a long time now. He was in and around Delta Tetra with us in the early years, and his introduction didn't do him justice for how much he's contributed to a lot of companies in the industry. And this isn't his first role as CFO. So I dragged you in, and I think I was like, yo, this is going really well. This is super cool what we're building here. And then like it was like
welcome to a shitstorm.
It was the first week we were all like squabbling about some petty bullshit.
Yeah. I was like, I remember having a conversation with you, like, yeah, dude, this super cool group of guys. Everyone gets on so well. Like first week on a job, like it's just a fucking fight. Everyone's going to their corners. I'm like, shit, where do I stand? I'm just going to be in the middle. Who do I team up with? Yeah, so I was like, all I like and want to deal with in life, and I'm sure everyone's the same here, is just people who have pure intent and no egos. And this industry is crawling with slime bags and egos. And so just to actually spend your days hanging out with guys who get shit done but without an ego and look how big my dick is what it's about. And that, I think, is why we're going to be the success we are, because we don't have egos, but we have quality. And that's very rare, because a lot of the times the guys with the egos don't have the quality. And that's that inferiority complex or insecurity where they've got to try and step up and talk a big game because they know they don't have it. Whereas we're stealth, under the radar. People are like, fuck, I've never even heard of these guys. Exactly. That's by design. That's by design. And so I think that's one of the keys, is just finding a group of people who, A, know how to have fun, but more importantly, know how to get shit done. And combination for me was I was like, okay, these guys are all about quality. And if you're like, there's two ways to play this market. You can go the fucking $80, 10 grams, low market, high volume, totally get that play, massive market, and things move quick, as we've seen. Or you can go the other end of the spectrum, which is the super quality, connoisseur level, wow, this is unbelievable, the best quality cannabis in Australia, and charge a premium for that, but you get what you pay for in life. And so if you want to do the $80 10-pack, great, but you're going to have stems. Don't complain about the stems. If you're going to go for the super high-end stuff, then, I mean, what we've got coming in, super excited about our new releases. So, yeah, I think the numbers speak for themselves. The quality is, I don't think anyone said we don't have any good quality. I mean, all the stuff online saying it's been as good as it gets. So, very stoked. But, yeah, adult, I'll take it. I probably a little bit more, I don't know, I feel that maybe because I'm the oldest, I think I've got to play the adult. But big shout out to Ian. He makes me feel like one of the boys when he's online.
It's really great to have you guys here in Melbourne this week, knowing that, you know, you're not just in town for the Cannabis Awards, but there's some really exciting news to announce in regards to quality Australian cultivation. And that is that you guys in Treehouse Distribution are teaming up with friends of the pod in Biortica Green Farmers. So what can the patient expect from this collaboration? You know, what does this mean for Australian quality cannabis?
What will it mean for patients? I think that's the reason why, you know, we're so focused on doing something within this space, is we want to work with a group that will allow us to drive quality throughout their facility, throughout their operation. And I think that's what this deal is around. It's around, you know, IP sharing and being able to collaborate and boost each other up as two different entities to achieve a common goal. And I think that's to bring the patient the best Australian grown, Australian owned cannabis, medical cannabis.
We've done a lot of big talking over the last several months, and now we've managed to find ourselves an opportunity to actually try and now back that up. So we've signed a partnership with Biortica Agrimeb to come in and work with them in their facilities, share some of the knowledge that we have, and bring some of the IP and networks that we've developed that I've been speaking about over the last sort of 8 or 9 years or whatever individually.
And look, I think this comes with great risk for Tom and the team at Green Farmers. Is he's actually putting their name behind the group of cowboys that most would look at as just disruptors. And I think that's a very bold statement to put your, you know, support behind our group, and we are very grateful for that. But what they do see is that us as a Treehouse team, and as you can see sitting right here, we're a powerhouse of cannabis heads that genuinely care about something. And I think the bigger players are looking at groups like this and realizing, well, hey, our business model hasn't worked. But yet these guys somehow just blow through, pop up out of nowhere with success behind them, a reputation and passion. I think that's something that, you know, the Green Farmers team, Tom and everyone there sees in us, is that we're passionate, but we're not only just passionate, we're here for the long term. And I think that is a big positive for the end consumer, the patient, is we want to stop importing so much to support local Australian jobs, but then produce the same high quality medicine that overseas countries are, and really keep that in Australia.
Yeah, we think we can do something a little bit different, and you know, everything that we've built so far has always been in sort of the quest of this, like having our own production space. Like all of us have, you know, worked on farms and been around cultivation for a long time, but like everybody wants to have their own like weed farm, right? We're not quite there yet, but Tom's given us a really good opportunity to work with them and to share some of the resources that they have, and I think it's going to allow us to bring something different to the market. And as John said, like, fair play to Tom and the team at Green Farmers, because when, you know, outwardly looking like not the easiest bunch to work with, but I think like we can bring something to them that they've identified that they need, and we have, and I think a lot of other groups haven't recognized that need over the last, you know, however long this industry's been legalized in Australia, and now we have an opportunity to try and show people what we're talking about. Like, it's all cool importing product, but now we get to actually grow it here and try and bring more affordable medicine to people, a better quality, fresher, which is so important, to not have old product arriving on the shores. Like, so I think we're going to get to do something really cool, and shout out to Tom for giving us that opportunity.
Yeah, it's he's a brave man, I'll say that much.
He's going to take some heat for it, though. He's definitely going to take some heat.
But look, I think we are, as those guys coming from where we've come from, we're going to receive some heat from the people who look at us as, oh, you're sellouts, or, you know, you're just doing this to participate in a corporate industry. Well, yes and no. Like,
kind of, yeah.
we have to, because we want to participate in this industry, but we are also the ones here pioneering for change. You know, I'm not saying we're going to legalize cannabis or do any of that. We're just here to bring change around product quality, and that's it.
And I mean, Tom sees that upside, and what that means to the green farmers business is phenomenal. Like, that, if we can deliver on what we said we're going to deliver on, and what that does to him and his business, I mean, everyone wins. And that's, I think, the beautiful part about this partnership is it's a true win-win scenario. Like, they get a win out of it, we get a win out of it, and I really feel it's going to be those sort of equations in life where, like, 1 + 1 = 3. Like, what we bring, what they bring, we just come from so different parts and ends of the spectrum, but to meet in the middle and sort of say, give them a win, give us a win, and I think that's going to be the start of something really, really, really exciting for all of us.
It's great, and it's great for us too, because, like, now we get to diversify and we get to be a bit more dynamic, and, like, there are constraints with importing. You're not in control of your own production schedule, your own genetics, your own cultivation methodology. You've got timelines for import that can be variables outside of your control. Like, it's not as easy, I think, as everybody thinks it is to do it well and maintain a consistent flow of product to people, which is important for the patient. And now we're going to be able to do that. So I think that's really going to help, like, Treehouse and as a company, and our brands and additional brands that I guess we'll bring to the table as a consequence of this. I think it's going to be really exciting for not only us and green farmers, but the patient base here in Australia too.
And this is everything coming full circle, and I think it really justifies your disposition in being outspoken, because you guys talk a lot about quality cannabis. Tom Varga, Green Farmers, talk a lot about the importance of Australian cannabis. So what we're seeing here is, you know, two forces coming together and ultimately putting their money where their mouth is. This is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, a big talk point between us and the Green Farmers team. You know, Tim and I spoke with Tom for 4 or 5 hours on Thursday just around that matter, you know, and we do stand for Australian grown. It's such a big thing, and so to see things start to progress and us to be allowed to be hands-on and work with such a great team with large canopy space, we can actually put our money where our mouth is and, you know, get on with it.
I hope people see this for what we intend it to be, because like as you just said a moment ago, John and I have been fairly critical of the state of play here in Australia, and I think sometimes that the intent behind that is misconstrued, and that we're trying to attack people and undermine them and just, like, being a pain in the ass for the sake of it. But, like, it's really not. Like, we don't have any particular grudges with anybody per se, but I don't agree with the way things are done, and I don't think John does either.
I don't think, like, I don't participate in, like, the LinkedIn world. It's not really my thing, but, like, you guys don't ever really attack anyone personally. You just attack quality across the board, which for me, as, like, someone who's, like, less of a green thumb, I still think I'm a pretty good grower, but these guys are, like, our champions of medicine. Like, that's for someone who needs good quality. Like, I can tell the difference, and this isn't a plug for high quality. It's got nothing to do with price. It's actual real quality when something is better than something for real traits.
At any price point. At any price point for any need, right? Like, whether it's glass house or whether it's outdoor. I mean, if you can get outdoor flower done well, like, which, like, it's done in, you know, Northern California and places, banging, right? There's no reason you can't have outdoor, but, like, it just needs, I kind of
just that passion for,
and
what it is.
I think that's what we've always tried to champion, I guess, as Timmy said. And so I hope that people don't look at this and go, you know, and try and paint it a color that it shouldn't be. And, you know, we hope, like, collectively, ourselves and Tom, that we can demonstrate that things can maybe be done a little bit differently, and that there is some, you know, upside to embracing people from the legacy market, or at least associated with it, because it's so important not to leave those people behind, and they can be so valuable to businesses. And in Australia, they really haven't been given a chance. Like, at sometimes, like, there's some people I see on LinkedIn that are like, they got like obviously legacy market experience, just crying for opportunities, and like all these clipboard wielding like botanists and things are like running around all these cannabis farms. I feel a bit sorry for them. So I hope that this can demonstrate, and I know Tom and that do as well, you know, that this can be a kind of union between those two sides of the coin.
Obviously, the overwhelming theme of the episode has been quality cannabis. And Jonathan, when you were on the show and I asked you, you know, what makes quality cannabis, you said, I wish there were more people. So here we are. We have the board of directors of what makes good quality cannabis. And your thing was kind of, you know, when you open a jar, that smell fills the room. That makes good quality cannabis. So that stuck firmly in my memory. But now that we've got the crew, let's put it out there. What makes good quality cannabis?
Well, I mean, what you just said about opening the jar and the smell, you probably noticed as soon as you walked into this apartment that it smelt like something, right? And so that, to us, is the start. Well, for me.
Yeah, it's like, you should, like, it's relatively easy to judge good flower, right? Like, if it's the terpene profile there, like if it smells, like, you really want, in fresh cannabis, the smell to be there. You want good, like, trichome or resin coverage, right? Not harvested too early. You can tell from the trichomes. You don't want gappy flowers, right? You want them well formed. Ideally a little bit dense, but still kind of squishy, sticky, like. And then it's all down to personal preference, right? Like, everyone then has their different view. Like, Haim and I often, we have, like, totally different palates. So
I think the whole group kind of, you and I side quite a lot together. Yeah, you and I are similar.
I feel like it also just depends. There's sometimes strains that just slap, and everyone's like, "Oh, these terps."
Yeah, like Z is like that, right? Yeah. Terrible bag appeal Skittles, terrible bag appeal grows like a real shit of a thing. Yeah, dude, it's like not a fun plant to grow. Doesn't look good, but the flavor profile on
slaps.
It,
insane.
Time.
A true Z, insane. Always.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to like the individual, but if you're talking like from a sort of medical perspective, like contextually within Australia, like, people need to learn how to identify good flower, like, quick, because there is not a lot of it out there. And
there's
like
some, but not much.
When we've spoken to like pharmacists and things, like, they've point blank like asked us, can you guys give us key indicators to look for? Like, what should we be assessing when we're looking at product? Like, some of them, you know, like to be able to share the opening experience with the patient, so they get to see the different products that's going out of the pharmacy. And so, like, I think there's a lot of like education that can be done on how to identify quality markers in cannabis in this country. One of the things that shouldn't be used to identify it, and I've heard this a lot like the last week while I've been here with you boys, big buds mean good quality.
Yeah.
It's like, no, dude. No.
Look, big buds to me equals mold.
Yeah, dude. There is
coming at me with a 5 gram bud
somewhere in there for sure. Yeah, that's another thing. People should be able to identify mold and mildew like pretty quickly, right? The amount of times you see people on like Reddit and things posting about it.
We've been in premium facilities. I'm talking $200-300 million facilities, growing big nugs. You crack one open and, what do we have here? A little infestation of mold.
The mids factories,
you know, and
endless mid factories.
So then it comes down to this thing of passion. Do I care enough to want to grow good quality medicine? And it's not size that matters in this instance.
You know, if you see it, man, like if you see really good weed, like the bag appeal, like if it's like well formed, frosty, like John said, the smell there, you're like, oh shit, like it lights up the senses.
Hamish, you mentioned in passing irradiation. I think many people don't actually know what that is and why we have it. Could you give us a little brief explanation about what irradiation is?
Irradiation is a form of, I guess, nuking your cannabis to some degree, but it's to kill all the microbial problems that come up. Basically, you know, ensuring its compliance with TGO 93. It's just part of the Australian framework, unfortunately, but
it still doesn't stop mold from being present. So it might kill it for now, but it can be zapped and then packed and shipped somewhere else.
Some companies I've seen have argued that, like, because it passed the testing to be
It's
released,
clean.
that it's clean. So just like go hell for
3 minutes.
go hell for leather, buddy.
Yeah.
I would not advise that anybody consume or in any way
No.
acquire mold on the lung. Yeah, definitely not what you want.
All right, now as we approach the tail end of the show, it's time for one of my favorite segments, and that is Polls of Wisdom. And though we value the long-form conversation, we try to leave the listener with one key takeaway, dinner party fact, or even a call to action. So, gentlemen, what is your Poll of Wisdom?
Price does not indicate quality. For the patients out there, like, I hope you find what's out there for you, the right medicine. Like, you know, there's a lot of crap out there, and for me, like, it's always been about making sure that everyone can access like high quality medicine, no matter what price point.
I was just going to say shout out to the Treehouse team. Not everyone's here, but you know, this wouldn't be possible without the 15 or 16 people that are involved in the business from day-to-day running. That is, I think, if anyone can look at this business and learn from what we've set up, that's
Yeah, that's like a
in a non-arrogant way. I'm just trying
that's a
not
nice
to say,
segue.
look, you know, we've worked hard to get here, and this whole team definitely appreciates everything that we've sacrificed to get here. So
My point feeds on nicely from that. There's a lot of people that reach out to all of us individually and collectively, like, how do you guys get into the industry? How do you find opportunity? How do you do X, Y, and Z? Like, we were, I guess, all collectively a little bit lucky, right place, right time. But there's like so much opportunity in this sector, and I think there should be more people like us that come from the backgrounds that we do, that don't have millions of dollars or like whatever it is that is perceived to be needed to get into the space. Just keep trying to find a different way, and like, it will eventually happen. I think it's so important because, like I said earlier, a lot of people get left behind and feel a bit left out in this space, and I think sometimes that needs to be acknowledged a little bit more.
Just my parting ball of wisdom, I think, is just back to the side effect of cannabis. Everyone's talking about the negative. Why don't we talk about the positive side effect of cannabis? And the families, the carers, the siblings of the patients, no one cares about them. No one speaks about them. Everything's patient. But I think those are the true winners of medical cannabis. And as those parents out there who've got those sick kids, I mean, like, it's tough enough, but to actually have a solution here which isn't poison, to be able to deliver to your child so they can sleep or stop having seizures or actually get their appetite back, or be able to speak to one of our patients for the first time. He had severe autism, non-verbal, and then after about 2 weeks on the medicine, then said to the first time in his entire life to his mum, "I love you." And to actually have your kid say for the first time, "I love you," is just, wow. I mean, that's the power of this medicine. I don't know what else in the world can start doing that. So that's the side effect, which I don't think anyone's talking about.
And top that, Hamish.
I was going to say, what the hell do you say after that?
yeah,
Just draws on some heartstrings. That's a tough one. No, I honestly think this cannabis medicine world has a long way to go. I still think, like, as much as I love flower, it's kind of bullshit that it's a medical product. I feel like there should be extracts that are consumed in different formats that would probably make much more sense
better medicine
medically, if you're coming straight from a medical standpoint. But, you know, there's a lot of research to be done still on that. And, like, flower is great, vaporizer great, but I feel like there's probably smarter ways to make medicines.
So many things to ponder there, both in that segment and in the show altogether. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to pick your brains today, get to know the story of Treehouse, Delta Tetra, and everything you guys are doing and have done. People can get in touch on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'll be sure to put some of those links down in the show notes. But gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
much appreciated, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to Give and Toke Cannabis Conversations presented by Plant Ed. Visit planteducation.net.au and use the code GIVETOKE10 at checkout to save.